We've all heard that line, investments can go up as well as down. But even if you know this is true and you understand that markets can recover given enough time, it still doesn't make it any easier when you receive a statement from your pension company or you check your accounts online and the value is constantly fluctuating. In the last 2 years, not only have we seen significant fluctuations in the stock market, but also in what are deemed safer assets such as bonds. If you're planning on retiring in the next few months or years, and you know you'll be relying on your pensions and investments for income, then these ups, downs, and general uncertainty can be extremely worrying. And even if you're many years off taking any income from your pension, then this might happen to you in the future, and hopefully this will prepare you for it. In this video, I'll explain what you can do to reduce this worry when you reach retirement, and how you can structure your underlying investments to reduce this risk. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name's Matt and I'm a UK-based independent financial planner. Here you'll learn how to make smart decisions with your money so you can get the most out of your earnings. Firstly, let's get a better understanding of why making withdrawals from your pension when it has dropped in value or during a market downturn can have a bigger impact than you might think. For this, we have an illustrative example. We have 3 people who have just approached retirement: John, Sarah and Vivek. All 3 retirees have a pension pot of £300,000. Let's see how different growth rates each year affect their pension. John's pension has a great start, growing 22% in the first year. In the following 7 years, John's pension sees positive growth each year. However, in the last 2 years, John's pension fund experienced negative growth, falling by 20% in year 9 and then 5% in year 10. Next, we have Sarah. Sarah's pension also sees a positive growth in the first few years. However, the pension has negative growth in the middle of her 10 years, at year 5 and year 6. After this, the fund performance picks back up over the final 4 years. Finally, we have Vivek. Vivek's pension has a poor start, with a significant drop in the first year where the fund falls by 20%. The second and third years are positive, however the 4th year sees the fund fall by 5%. Thereafter, the remaining years are all positive. So, despite each person's pension fund growing and falling at different times for these 10 years, the average growth rate for all 3 pension funds is 7%, and each person experienced these annual growth rates. Therefore, they've all ended up at the same value of £550,000. However, in our example, John, Sarah and Vivek have just retired. They're no longer working and they need a source of income for the next 10 years before their state pension and final salary pension starts. They each withdraw £30,000 a year from their pension and increase this withdrawal by 3% a year to help maintain their purchasing power. Let's have a look at the effect of this on each pension. The difference in the pension values between John, Sarah and Vivek is huge. John's pension after 10 years is worth over £184,000. Sarah's is approximately £135,000, whereas Vivek's is only just over £5,000. The difference in the final 10-year value between John and Vivek is over £179,000. So why is there such a difference when their average rate of return was the same for all investors? The reason for this is down to timing. When they had good years and when they had bad years during their 10-year stretch has a real impact on their final pension value. In John's case, he experienced higher than average returns early in his retirement. This initial positive growth increased the overall value of his pension and allowed John to take his income without depleting the principal value of his pension pot. The positive return not only boosted his pension value initially, but also set him up for a greater compounding effect. As his pension grew in the first year, the returns then generated in the following years became more significant as they were starting from a higher point. This provided John with that much needed cushion for the latter years where he experienced negative growth in years 9 and 10. Sarah, on the other hand, had a significant dip in the middle of her 10 years, which did impact the portfolio value, but the damage was lessened due to the positive growth she saw in years 1 to 4. However, Vivek had a poor start in the early years, and this is where we see the impact. Vivek started withdrawing money during a market downturn. Therefore, he was required to sell his underlying pension fund at a lower price, locking in these losses. Even though Vivek's pension did experience higher than average returns in the later years, at that point the pension value was already depleted, and therefore the impact of this growth was lessened as it was from a lower starting point. This concept is known as sequence of returns risk, and for many people it's what they've experienced over the last couple of years. So, what are some strategies that can be implemented to help reduce this risk? The first one is to save and hold a portion of cash either inside your pension or externally in a savings account or ISA, and use this cash to fund the first 1 to even 4 years of retirement. Let's have a look at Vivek's situation if he were to hold 3 years worth of income in a cash fund. At the start of Vivek's retirement, he switches £90,000 of his pension fund into his pension's cash account, which has an interest rate of 3%, meaning he has £210,000 remaining in the pension fund. For the next 3 years, he does not withdraw from his pension fund and uses the cash account instead. This means he does not lock in the earlier losses he experienced and therefore gives his pension fund additional years to recover before withdrawing from it. The result of this is after 10 years, the pension value is £26,000 higher when using a 3-year cash reserve strategy compared to putting 100% into the pension fund. While cash and savings accounts do not fluctuate like a typical pension fund would, there is the consideration that your cash holdings may not keep up with inflation. Therefore, the real value of this money diminishes. Also, a well-diversified and suitably invested pension fund during this period does have greater odds of going up in value than not. Data from the MSCI World Index, which is a benchmark that measures the performance of solely equity markets across developed countries, has shown over the last 48 years, the index has had positive growth in 37 of those 48 years, which is 77% of them. So in the case of Sarah and John, they saw positive returns early on and therefore would have missed out on these initial years of growth. Let's have a look at what this strategy would have done to their portfolio. If Sarah and John had adopted this 3-year cash reserve strategy, it would have resulted in their pension values being roughly £36,000 lower than if they stayed 100% in the original pension fund. But why don't we go one step further, and instead of just having a cash account and a pension fund, we segregate our income into 3, 4, or even 5 different pots. This strategy is known as the bucket approach. With a bucket approach, not only would you have your cash reserve for your short-term income and your pension fund for your long-term income, but you could introduce at least one other bucket for a period between these two. Here's an example of this approach using 3 buckets. In bucket 1, again, you would hold cash, but as we're adopting a 3-bucket approach, we will have 1 to 2 years worth of income in here. The second bucket will also hold assets that are typically less volatile than our third bucket and therefore likely include a portion of bonds, but will also be exposed to equities, giving that prospect of additional growth. This bucket will have income for years 3 to 7. Our final bucket for year 7 onwards will be the most growth orientated. So the majority of the investments here will be in equities. The goal here is to let these investments grow over time while we use the first 2 buckets for the earlier years of income. Although this bucket is likely to be the most volatile, we have more time on our side, giving us a greater chance of higher growth during these 7 years prior to taking income from it. If you use this strategy, you will need to revisit your initial setup, and you may need to adjust the allocation of money in each bucket. I recommend you look at this at least annually to make sure it's suitable for you. So, of course, there is a balance to strike here and different risks to consider on how you can set up your portfolio when you start to draw income from it. By having a cash reserve pot, it reduces the impact of sequence of returns risk and give you your pension that much needed time required if it does fall in value in those initial years. However, allocating too much to cash or even bonds in your pension can cause a drag on the overall long-term growth, and this could mean your pension grows at an insufficient rate to meet your retirement income needs. No one can be certain of what the future growth rates will be of yours or anyone else's pension fund, whether it be this, next, or any years after that. So the best strategy is to make a plan that is personal to you. Factors such as whether your withdrawals are sustainable, whether your overall pot is sufficient to withstand significant short-term falls, how you feel about the ups and downs in your portfolio, whether you have any other income sources you can rely on, or whether you have the flexibility to reduce your income, all come into play when deciding what is appropriate in terms of cash, bonds and equities and any other assets in your portfolio. With that in mind, this video is the third of the retirement planning and pension series. But if you want to take a step back and brush up on your pension knowledge, then go back to video 1 over here where I go through the fundamentals of pensions in the UK. And for more videos in the future, subscribe down below and I'll see you in the next one.